On November 30th, 1934, a steam locomotive hurtles down Britain's East Coast main line, shattering the 100 miles per hour barrier and rewriting engineering history. This machine, the legendary Flying Scotsman, was never meant to survive the rise of the car, the onslaught of war, or the scrapman's torch. So how did an engine that cost 7,944 pounds and was built in 1923 defy extinction for a century, capturing imaginations and outliving its own purpose? The answer rewrites everything we think we know about ambition, nostalgia, and survival on steel rails. At Doncaster Works in early 1923, teams of craftsmen and engineers gathered around a new kind of locomotive. Numbered 1472, this machine was the first of its class for the newly formed London and Northeastern Railway, known as LNER, built at a cost of 7,944 pounds. Sir Nigel Gresley, the chief mechanical engineer, studied the blueprints with a sense of purpose. He wanted more than brute force. He demanded efficiency, reliability, and a touch of elegance. The result was a 97-ton, 70-foot-long Pacific, designed not just to pull trains, but to compete in a world where the open road was calling. Across Britain, the Austin 7 had just launched, offering families the dream of personal freedom on four wheels. Yet Gresley's vision was rooted in the power of steel rails and the promise of speed. The railway world itself was changing fast. Dozens of smaller companies had just merged into four giants, with the LNER staking its claim to the East Coast route from London to Edinburgh. Their new flagship would need to stand out, not just in performance, but in the public imagination. In 1924, the locomotive was selected for display at the British Empire exhibition at Wembley. Under the exhibition lights, the name Flying Scotsman was unveiled, linking the engine directly to the famous express service it would soon haul. Polished green paint and bold lettering caught the attention of a nation. For the first time, a machine wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol of progress, a rolling ambassador for a railway determined to outpace the march of the motorcar. May 1st, 1928, the platform at King's Cross thrummed with anticipation as the Flying Scotsman prepared for its most ambitious journey yet, a non-stop dash from London to Edinburgh, 392 miles in just over 8 hours. The secret weapon sat just behind the cab, a corridor tender, a steel tunnel running through the coal and water that allowed the driver and firemen to swap out with fresh crew while the train thundered north at speed. No other railway in Britain could boast such a feat. The London and Northeastern Railway engineers had designed the tender to hold 9 long tons of coal and 6,000 gallons of water, with the locomotive scooping up water from troughs laid between the rails, never pausing, never slowing. Passengers dined on white linen and crystal, while the world outside blurred past the windows. The LNER publicity machine seized the moment, filling newspapers and posters with tales of modernity and elegance. The Flying Scotsman became more than a train. It was a rolling stage for Britain's engineering prowess, a symbol of what railways could achieve in the face of growing competition from the open road. Then, on November 30th, 1934, the Flying Scotsman thundered down the line near Little Bytham. On board, timing officials watched the speedometer climb through 60, 70, 80, 90. Then, for a measured stretch, the needle reached 100 miles per hour. The achievement was logged, verified, and trumpeted to the world. For the first time, a steam locomotive had officially broken the century mark, silencing doubters and planting the London and Northeastern Railway flag firmly in the ground of railway history. By the mid-1930s, a new breed of locomotive began to steal the spotlight. The London and Northeastern Railway's streamlined A4 Pacifics, led by the striking blue Mallard, sliced through the air with speed and a grace that made the once revolutionary Flying Scotsman seem old-fashioned almost overnight. Rivalry with the LMS grew fiercer, each railway racing to outdo the other in speed and publicity. The Scotsman, now overshadowed, took on lesser expresses and heavy wartime duties as global conflict darkened the rails. Its gleaming green gave way to a coat of wartime black, blending into the night as it hauled troop trains and evacuees through bomb-threatened countryside. Nationalization arrived in 1948, and with it a new number 60103, and a set of smoke deflectors that signaled a shift from glamour to utility. Steam was fading, replaced by the relentless advance of diesel and electric power. The Flying Scotsman, once the pride of the London and Northeastern Railway, now faced the end of the line. But in January 1963, as the Big Freeze gripped the country, a lifeline appeared. Alan Pegler, a businessman with a passion for steam, struck a deal that stunned the railway world. He bought the locomotive outright, negotiating a contract with the British Rail that allowed him to run it privately on the main line, a clause almost unheard of in the age of modernization. The engine was stripped of its wartime additions and restored to its original apple green livery, a bold act of defying the march of progress. On April 10, 1963, the Flying Scotsman thundered out of Paddington, crowds 10 deep on the platforms, the air thick with nostalgia and hope. Against all odds, the locomotive had found a new champion and a new reason to run. Trouble struck on a cold morning near Swindon in 1963. The Flying Scotsman, now running as a private venture, thundered along with the Welsh Mystery Flyer Tour. Suddenly the cab filled with choking steam. The driver fought for control, visibility vanished, and the train lurched to a halt on the main line. Mechanics scrambled over the hot machinery, discovering that critical nuts on the steam chest had been loosened. Whether by accident or sabotage, the result was nearly catastrophic. With bare hands and borrowed tools, the crew tightened every bolt, coaxed the engine back to life, and pressed on toward Cardiff. Against the odds, they still set a new speed record for the route that day, but the sense of vulnerability lingered. Alan Pegler's ambitions only grew. In 1969, he loaded the Scotsman onto a cargo ship bound for America, determined to show the world that British steam could conquer new continents. American regulations demanded a cowcatcher, a brass bell, and a glaring headlight. The engine rolled through Texas, up to Canada, and drew crowds wherever it went. But on paper, the numbers told a different story. State after state barred steam as a fire risk, forcing the Scotsman to be towed or sidelined. Ticket sales dried up. The British government withdrew its backing. By 1972, Pegler's accounts were deep in the red. Creditors circled. The Flying Scotsman was hidden at a Navy base near San Francisco, out of public sight, waiting for a rescue that seemed less likely with each passing day. The dream of private preservation had run aground on foreign rails, and the locomotive's future was more uncertain than ever. William McAlpine stepped in when all seemed lost. He wired funds across the Atlantic to claim the Flying Scotsman before creditors could seize it for scrap. George Hinchcliffe took charge of the logistics and orchestrated a discreet loading onto a cargo ship bound for Liverpool. The journey home wound through the Panama Canal, dodging legal entanglements and paperwork. In 1973, the locomotive rolled back onto British rails, battered but intact. It was a private rescue. 15 years later, the Scotsman set its sights on Australia. During the bicentennial celebrations, it powered across the outback, tackling the harsh landscape between Parkes and Broken Hill. On August 8, 1989, the engine completed a 422-mile non-stop run, the longest ever by a steam locomotive. Against red dust and endless sky, the Flying Scotsman reclaimed its place as a record breaker, its legend now spanning continents. By the early 1990s, the Flying Scotsman was running out of time. Decades of hard service had left deep scars, cracked frames, failing cylinders, and mounting mechanical problems that no quick fix could hide. Tony Marchington, a passionate entrepreneur, stepped in with grand plans for revival, but the 1996 overhaul spiraled far beyond expectations. Invoices piled up and costs soared, over £1 million above budget. The strain proved too much, and Marchington was forced into bankruptcy. Headlines warned of a national treasure at risk. The public response was swift and fierce, fueling the 2004 Save Our Scotsman campaign. The National Railway Museum secured the locomotive with a £2.3 million bid, locking its future into public hands. Engineers began a decade-long restoration, stripping the engine down to bare metal, repairing every flaw, and documenting each step. In 2016, the Flying Scotsman steamed out of the workshop, restored for a new century, no longer a private dream, but a safeguarded piece of national history. Steam vanished from Britain's main lines decades ago, yet over 1 million people still turn out to see the Scotsman run each year. Its survival proves that engineering is not just about progress, it is about memory. In an age obsessed with speed, some legends endure because we refuse to forget.